think it's just fucking great that an organisation like this is already starting to take notice.
I have something I want to say about that, because I feel like all of these things could have been prevented if at the time they decided to bring cannabis to the market, they actually had a proper plan.
Yeah.
They didn't. They just said, you know what, we're wiping our hands clean of this. We're not going to approve it. We're not looking at it.
Yeah.
And we'll just let the doctors run free with it. And now they're having patients being admitted for psychosis. One person died, which I don't know the circumstances of that, but that's pretty bad. And they're seeing all these issues years later. It's
like they've let the reins go and they're trying to go, oh shit, we've done something wrong here. Let's try and tighten the reins back.
Exactly.
And the horse is already bolted
out of the stable.
The biggest part, new AHPRA guidelines. They're actually not new AHPRA guidelines.
No.
That's exactly what it should have been at the start.
Yes.
Like the only evidence, the only TGA approved evidence is evidence for childhood epilepsy, muscle spasms and pain associated with multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
And cancer and chemotherapy.
Yeah. So, and that's always been the case.
Yeah.
And they state very clearly that there is very limited evidence for its use in psychological conditions, pain, and insomnia.
Yeah.
But they are by far the three conditions that the cannabis is being prescribed for when compared to the actual indications that it's approved for there.
The SafeScript thing that I wanted to talk about, where the boss basically said, they also insist patients be thoroughly assessed, proper medical records be taken, and an exit strategy is developed to help patients stop taking the medications. Like the appropriate patient record taking is assessing what other medications they're on. None of these doctors that we speak to, at least in cannabis clinics, are even considering assessing that.
Yeah.
No one's checking SafeScript. Like SafeScript's got its own flaws in itself, where it's like state-based. We've got a national prescriber base.
Yes, that is a huge thing.
Doctors in Queensland can't see what doctors in New South Wales or South Australia are doing, vice versa. I talked about this in the newsletter last month, actually, so it's pretty timely.
Yeah.
But if we're going to have a national prescriber basis, then SafeScript needs to be
national,
centralised and national.
Yeah,
not
accessible. Just state by state.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Stupid. Interestingly, I think it was one of Susan O'Dwyer, so the medical board of Australia chair, she said, we don't prescribe opioids to every patient who asks for them. So why are we doing that for medicinal cannabis? It's no different.
Yeah. But that's what's happening in the cannabis clinics. And they even stated in there some of their major concerns is patients are just asking for it.
Oh, yeah.
They just want it.
And putting pressure on the doctors to prescribe it because they're like, well,
I don't think they're putting pressure,
to
be honest. I think the doctors want the money. And so
that.
Not everyone. Obviously, there is doctors doing the right thing. But we're talking these cannabis clinics where in here they recorded some patients had spent 4 seconds on the phone with the doctor, less than 2 minutes on the phone with the doctor. Basically, the patient's going, oh, yeah, can I just have some flour? The doctor's, yep, cool. I'll send you 6 different types. You tell me which one you like. Talk to you next time. Boom, on to the next person. And that particular article expresses concern about multiple prescribers who had given 10,000 cannabis products in 6 months.
More than half a dozen gave 10,000 scripts in 6 months, and one did 17,000 in 6 months.
17,000.
One script every 4 minutes.
Yeah, like who are you actually reviewing in that time? 17,000 scripts. You're a drug dealer.
Yeah.
You are not a doctor.
Well, they even say that some of the doctors in here are saying that the clinics that they're working for are pushing them to be drug dealers more than clinicians, where their sole purpose is just to write
the script. Don't spend too much time.
Patients are being reviewed by pharmacists and nurse practitioners and allied health professionals in the clinic, and then the doctor's kind of just reviewing the notes that they're taking and prescribing off the back of that.
Yeah.
But 57 practitioners basically reprimanded, with another 60 being investigated. So
yeah, and we've been talking, like all the pharmacists, and we do these reviews all the time. We've been talking a lot recently because we've noticed this weird thing where the cannabis clinics are changing names and they're changing their business structure, and all of a sudden, you know, what used to be called this is now called this, and there's different doctors in there, and then this doctor's gone overseas, you don't find them anymore, and that cannabis prescriber isn't allowed to prescribe anymore, and you can see it on their AHPRA. So we have seen these changes happening, but we weren't really sure what was going on behind the scenes. And now this article explains it, that AHPRA is doing an investigation. And 57 have already been taken action against, and they're investigating another 60. And they're also investigating pharmacists as well as nurse practitioners and the prescribers for the cannabis. So pharmacists are also going to be on the line if they're not doing their due diligence and just, dispensing scripts without checking everything else.
Yeah.
Or dispensing 10 flowers and 6 oils in the one day, which is like excessive. But for the pharmacy, unfortunately, it's also a very profitable business. So they're
Profits
all
over treatment is what it really has come down to.
Exactly. And and I think that AHPRA guy's, I don't know what his name is, sorry, Mr. AHPRA man. He makes a statement in that article about that. Doctors need to go back to putting patients' wellness and care as a priority over profits, because that has not been happening with cannabis at the moment.
No. I'm fearful that it's going to be the same for MDMA and psilocybin when it comes out. If this is not addressed now, like we've already seen, one major Medibank.
Yes,
is
Medibank Private. Yeah, I saw that
crazy. Like,
very
that's
recently.
Can of worms, because once it's approved for one, generally solicitors and legal teams get involved and they get approved for everybody.
Yeah. And that'll be expensive.
But yeah, I think it was interesting. I've just made some notes of this. AHPRA confirms what we've basically been flagging for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The regulator has finally accepted that what we're doing has consistently identified uncontrolled medicinal cannabis prescribing and what it's creating with patient harm, like the ED admissions, psychosis, medicinal cannabis-induced psychosis.
Yeah.
It validates what we're doing and the need for further oversight on medicinal cannabis prescribing within workers' comp and CTP especially, but nationally overall. I think.
Definitely.
And it needs to be an independent body that's doing this. It can't be the dispensing pharmacies. It can't be the PSA and the Pharmacy Guild and those types of people, because they're already involved in this. Mm-hmm. Because they're already involved in it, it should have been managed appropriately by those bodies.
Yeah.
So being independent, I think, is going to be a really key thing for us, where we don't need the referrals from the doctors and things. We can do audits and get referrals from the insurers and those.
But I also think we're in a good position to do that, because the cannabis prescriber, if they've only spent 2 minutes with the patient, hasn't probably gotten a proper medication history of the patient, or they haven't checked SafeScript, or the patient hasn't told them, because the patient should disclose, but maybe they haven't disclosed all their other meds.
Shouldn't necessarily be on the patient per se. They might not know that the other medications that they're taking
could interact or
yeah,
that's true.
In best practice, it should be discussed, and realistically, the prescribing doctor, especially these S8 medications, should be checking the SafeScript records, not just taking the patient's word for it. But the breakdown in that is that the SafeScript's state specific. So if you've got an interstate patient, then what's the process? They need to be able to check that state's SafeScript, and that should be a flag for them that I've got a New South Wales patient contacting me as a prescriber in Queensland or WA.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's getting dispensed in a completely different state. It's so
and
disconnected.
Getting posted.
And then the poor treating doctor in New South Wales, unbeknown to them, the person's taking cannabis at all.
That's it, because that New South Wales doctor could be checking SafeScript in New South Wales and it's not coming up because it's being dispensed in a totally different state. And that's a major issue as well, because then that GP isn't aware of its use. And if their patient, let's say their patient were to decline, if it was being used for a psychological purpose, and then all of a sudden this person's getting paranoid or anxious or not sleeping, and they're like, why is this happening? What's going on? They don't know about the med cannabis. So then they start manipulating all the other meds, sending them for an inpatient admission in a hospital, sending them to the psychiatrist. But the actual problem is being missed. Yeah. And we've had a few claims where that exact thing has happened. It's taken us, unfortunately, from an external perspective to see this in a broader picture and be like, oh, hey, did you know about the cannabis? Oh, no, how much is he using? Oh, of course that's going to be impacting him.
Yeah. And that's another thing as well, is that they're not just getting one product.
Very rare.
A lot of the times they're on at least 2. We see 5, 6, 7 different products sometimes, all dispensed in the same month.
Yes.
You're not going to prescribe 7 different opioid products.
Oh, my God. But that's exactly right. It's, but we just don't know which one they're going to and which one's going to work. So we just gave them a script for 6 different types of cannabis flowers just to try and see. But yeah, would you ever prescribe 6 different opioids? Be like, we don't know what you like, so we'll give you a Palexia, Targin, an MS-Contin, an Anamorph, and see which one you like, and just try them all intermittently. Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. It's just crazy. And the AHPRA, the new rules around that as well is something that they want to discuss about having multiple products just for the patient to trial. That's not appropriate prescribing.
Definitely not. But I think this comes down to that next point. Profit-driven prescribing is no longer tolerated. Profit-driven prescribing, and a lot of the times we're seeing, and I guess assuming in some instances, that there's some sort of incentive for that doctor to prescribe specific products or specific strains of cannabis. And then they're working from a clinic that's also associated with the pharmacy.
That particular pharmacy.
So I think it's definitely profit driven. Yes. Go back to when cannabis was first brought to market. We were starting to review it back then, and we'd see TGA numbers just spiking, graphs going up. It'd be like 400,000 prescriptions of cannabis or applications submitted to TGA for cannabis use, and it's like, how many declinatures? And it would always say like less than 10.
So basically none.
And we'd look, and there'd be like 410,000 prescription applications and 410,000 approvals. It's like they're not approving or declining anything.
No one's looking at it really.
Yeah.
No one, and that's the thing. There's been no oversight over the whole thing from the very beginning. And we've been trying our hardest to try and discuss the risks with every doctor we've spoken to, doing webinars to try and educate case managers and insurers about the risks. And now, years later, finally, someone has, maybe we should look at this. Actually, someone died because of this. We've had heaps of people, they actually say the words have significant harm to their health because of this cannabis.
Not just the undiagnosed psychosis and things that's the problem. That's what they've spoken about in that particular section of that. But it's the combinations that these people are having, the multiple products. Sometimes they're going to different cannabis clinics to get different products as well. So there's just this complete disconnect, and no one's looking at this holistically going, hang on, this person's got some sort of psychological disorder that needs to be taken in consideration before we start exploring these
psychoactive products, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
THC containing products.
Which is also why we started to bring in this medicinal cannabis management program. So from what we saw prior to all of this, but years ago, was the lack of oversight from the prescribers, not just from the NTDs in our space that's treating the actual patient, but from the cannabis prescribers, from the clinics especially. And we found that when there's a clinic involved, it's generally poor management of the treatment rather than the actual treatment themselves that are somewhat a problem. So what we were seeing was a lot of Queensland prescribers prescribing cannabis unbeknown to the NTD in New South Wales. So the NTD would continue prescribing opioids, benzos, pregabalin, quetiapine, all these sort of high-risk psychoactive medications. And then the patient would get medicinal cannabis prescribed from somewhere else. And there was no unified treatment plan there. There was no goal of treatment from the cannabis prescriber to say, hey, maybe we should try this to reduce these other medications.
Exactly.
Often they're not even aware of those other medications. So how could they have like this
a plan together?
Plan.
And often the cannabis doctor will not correspond with the GP, or the GP doesn't write a referral for the cannabis initially.
Yes, self-referred is another big problem.
Self-referred is a huge problem. I've spoken to a few doctors lately where the GP has said, I did not recommend that he go on cannabis. I don't think he should be on the cannabis. That is why it's not written on the certificate of capacity, because I don't want them on it. But the patient's gone and done it themselves.
So I think, from the creation of this cannabis management program, which in my opinion, everybody that's prescribed cannabis should be on. And that was because there was no treatment plan created when they just initiated it. They were just going to prescribe it to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then they're relying on patient-reported feedback, which is just, I feel better, I'm sleeping better, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it wasn't resulting in any changes in the other conventional medications.
Yeah.
So in creating the program, we've basically put a clinical process in place for the doctors and for the insurers to understand it better as well, but for the doctors to be like, okay, now we're all aware of what all of the medications this person's being prescribed. There's a plan in place, which means we're reviewing cannabis at 0, 6, and 12 weeks. and the treatment plan is this. It
Yeah,
might be
the goals.
improvements in pain, improvements in sleep, reductions in those medications that are being used to treat those conditions.
Improved functioning.
Improved functions, like probably the main one. But if that's not met, what's the next step? Because the next step can't just be, oh, we'll just leave it for the rest of their life and
Exactly.
they can continue to take these and
Yeah.
continue to take this.
The other thing as well that is important is cannabis products are very expensive, especially if they're being prescribed an oil to be used at the day, an oil at night, a flower that's less stimulating for daytime use, a flower to use at nighttime that's more sedating. That's $1,000 worth of stuff a month.
Unless it's been charged to an insurer, then it's $2,000.
Yeah, they get charged double.
Yeah.
But in a real world scenario, if you were prescribing those products to a community patient, if that person was not getting a major benefit and they were having to fork that money out, I can guarantee you they wouldn't be paying for it.
That's right.
But the insurance company is paying for it. It's not costing this person anything. So even if they're not seeing a major benefit, they're like, I'm not paying for it, so I may as well keep using it. It's a huge barrier.
Yeah.
Because, if you were paying $1,000 a month for something that wasn't working, you would stop paying
Or you were
for
only
it.
getting like a 10% improvement, you would then go, oh,
Is it worth
is it
it?
really worth this 10% improvement?
Probably not for that money.
Yeah.
But if it's free essentially to yourself, you're just like, hey, that 10%, may as well have that 10% improvement and
Yeah.
keep going.
Not realising that the sleep duration that they're getting might have improved, but the sleep quality has
It's
significantly
worse.
decreased.
Yeah.
As it does with benzos and things like that. So it's certainly not advocating for one or the other.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a place for all of those medications long
For
term,
sleep.
especially for sleep. But that's what we're seeing a lot of cannabis being used for, was for sleep,
Or-
which that article's speaking of now as well, where we can't have it prescribed for anxiety, insomnia, pain that's unrelated to anything else. There's certain criteria that they need to meet.
Yeah.
And if first and second line products haven't been used, then cool, we can trial medicinal cannabis, or the prescribers can, under a clinical trial type situation where
scenario.
it's being monitored and being measured.
And there is a plan in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what we were seeing before this cannabis program came out was insurers would approve cannabis and then the person would be prescribed it basically lifelong. And there was no review, there was no criteria that needed to be met for it to be justified and continued ongoing use. So at least with this trial, with this program, it could be assessed clinically over that 0, 6 and 12 week period. And then if there was benefit, cool, there was
We can
reported
see it.
factual benefit that we could work with. But
And improvements in the medications, which is essentially a good outcome. You know.
100%.
Yeah. So, and we want to see that. Yeah. And we do if it's being appropriately managed. I think the main time that we see the benefits with the cannabis is if it's being properly managed and prescribed by pain specialist in pain, obviously.
I think what we have been seeing is that if it's being prescribed by one of their key treatment providers,
you get a
seems
better
to be-
outcome.
Yeah.
Even if it's a GP and they take the onus of prescribing the cannabis, because they're also prescribing all the other meds, they're definitely much more likely to alter the other medications when they
it's being
see.
used in replacement to, not in addition to.
Yeah.
More or less.
But it's just when there's an external med cannabis doctor from a totally different clinic that we see these bigger issues come on board. And that's why having us involved in that is so important, because often the GP and that cannabis doctor don't talk, the pain specialist might not know, or the psychiatrist, and we bring all those people together, create a plan, implement it, talk to them all, see where it's at 6 weeks' time. Have they been successful? Is it working? Has it improved their sleep? Cool. Does that mean the benzo's gone down, or the zolpidem, whatever it is? And then, assess it appropriately. Because without having that oversight, unfortunately, it can just be this extra thing that's prescribed that no one's looking at, and then this person's on all their original meds plus cannabis forever.
Yeah. And I think once we can spell it out in a pretty comprehensive report at those set points, that obviously is sent to the doctor as well as the insurer, one for transparency, but two so that they can use it as a clinical reference for when they're speaking to the patient next.
Yeah.
It shows that there has or hasn't been improvements at X amount of 6 weeks or 12 weeks. Then the doctor can say, look, it hasn't been effective. Unfortunately, we tried, it wasn't appropriate or wasn't effective. We're going to stop it now. But what we were finding is if that wasn't done, that person was continuing to use all of those products forever. More or less.
And the other thing I see quite often is maybe the cannabis was initiated to treat chronic pain, didn't help the pain. Oh, but the person, they just feel better and they're sleeping better. So we're keeping it going because of the sleep. But that was not the indication. It's okay, you're prescribing Targin to manage pain, but their pain's still really bad. Oh, but they're sleeping a little bit better. So we'll keep the Targin for their sleep, but we'll prescribe this other opioid to help their pain because that one wasn't working. The rationale gets really skewed. It's like the cannabis has just come out with its own rules suddenly. I don't know, it's really weird.
Yeah, it changed prescribing right from the start,
it really did.
Because like we were seeing those types of things with other medications as well. Cannabis was new kid on the block. But we were seeing the same thing with benzos, hypnotic sedatives and stuff for sleep. Lyrica was one of the big ones I think we saw that for, and quetiapine, where it's like the person doesn't really have a psychiatric condition, but they're helping them sleep. So we'll keep them on the quetiapine. We're not doing anything else. You know?
Yeah, like sleep hygiene or CBT and the important stuff to help with sleep. And then another big thing with sleep is, so REM sleep is like one of the deeper versions of sleep that's very important for our memory, our cognitive processing. It helps with learning and recovery basically of the brain. So if you're not going into a deep REM sleep, you're actually not having a proper restorative sleep, and it's going to impact your cognitive functioning. Any hypnotic sedative, benzos, the Z drugs, and medicinal cannabis have all been shown to inhibit your ability to get into that REM sleep. So they're being sedated.
Yeah, very different. Being sedated is very different to restorative sleep.
Yeah. So essentially, treating sleep is extremely difficult because you want to do it without medication, really, ideally. You want to be able to do it using those extra like psychological techniques or sleep hygiene habits and stuff so that you're not having that major negative impact of the sleep meds.
We talk about that all the time with sleep, where sleep drugs and benzos and those types of things can be really good when used effectively for that short period, which is why they're indicated for 2 to 4 weeks.
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
It takes you that long to assist in helping
getting
form
a habit.
A sleep habit. If you need the benzo to go to sleep at night time for a short period, great, do that. But make sure you're doing it so you go to bed at a regular time, you wake up at a regular time, you're not napping through the day, you're avoiding caffeine after lunchtime, you're sleeping in a dark room, you're seeing morning sun. Like, you're doing all the things that should be done in your everyday life, and the medication's just there to assist in forming that. Same with pain. Like, yeah, you can take the painkillers. Some specialists call them the exercise enhancers. So it's like, we're going to dull the pain for you for a period of time whilst you improve your functionality and your mobility and your strength and all that sort of stuff.
And implementing all those extra things that are actually going to help you long term, instead of just dulling the pain without putting like the work into exercise and stretching and strengthening is really important too. Strength-based training is great. Yeah.
But anyway, back to medicinal cannabis. In this article, I think it's really beneficial that, or really exciting that someone like AHPRA has now started to take the lead a little bit on this and reprimand and make changes to the guidelines and the prescribing of medicinal cannabis. The guideline shift, I think, is going to be a huge one. The clinical justification over profits, I think, is a big point.
Very important.
Prescribers and cannabis clinics specifically are the ones that seem to be the worst offenders in there. Maybe that talks about your point where the names of clinics are changing and maybe ownership's changing. I don't know, I haven't really looked into it, but like all those sorts of things.
I've seen a few of the real big ones where either like the main prescriber there has lost their ability to prescribe cannabis, because we go and we Google these people. Like, we're just
part of what we do. We are very thorough with what we do. We look up AHPRA registration to see if they're still current.
Because it's odd. It's this doctor used to prescribe all the time, and now all of a sudden they've disappeared. Where have they gone? Yeah. Oh, they've moved overseas. That's a bit fishy. That's sus. What's happening? Yeah. Or you go onto their AHPRA to look at their registration, and there's a huge thing that says not allowed to prescribe medicinal cannabis products, anything containing THC, blah, blah, blah. So obviously there is a lot going on at the moment where they're investigating these prescribers, and the cannabis clinics seem to be changing, because I've noticed that there was a lot of those online clinics where there's no office. It's just all online.
Can't contact
you can't call anyone.
Or anybody.
Yeah, that's
Send
dodgy.
An email.
Yeah.
So dodgy.
Yeah, you can't.
Especially when you're prescribing high risk S8 medications.
As a pharmacist, if I was dispensing something and I had a question and it was just an online-only cannabis clinic, I would have absolutely no way to contact them. And because we try to contact them for our reviews. We send emails multiple times a day. We call the phone number, which is only for booking an appointment.
Which is an offshore phone reception.
Exactly.
Virtual assistant anyway.
Yeah, it's a virtual thing. It's not a person.
Yeah.
There's no office that you can try and locate. It's literally just all this online sort of database, and doctors log in for booked in and paid appointments. And we've done that. Where we have booked and paid for an appointment to try and catch a doctor, and it just does not work for us. But there's no other way to catch the doctor. So as a pharmacist, I don't know if what's the legalities around
legally,
that?
Because remember, when you're dispensing an S8 medication, you have to either know the doctor or have dispensed medications from them before, and you're supposed to check the products with the doctor. I actually put a link to the S8 prescribing. It was New South Wales based, but I'm pretty sure it's the same in Queensland and other states. But they need to dispense it legally, the contact details have to be
there
on the script, and it can't
and they
just
should be contactable.
And they have to be contactable.
Yeah, because if you've got a question and the patient's in front of you and you're dispensing something, you should be able to get onto that doctor.
Yeah. And I think the other thing as well is that a lot of these doctors only work after hours for a clinic. So they might work in their general clinic through the day.
Yeah.
And then they're sitting down at night time writing 17,000 scripts for a cannabis clinic.
Yeah, they could be doing it from home.
Yeah.
Or we try and catch different doctors from different clinics, and it's, but this doctor only does 1 day a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
They only work 3 hours on a Thursday afternoon and 1 hour on a Monday morning. So it's,
or they only work from 7 till 12 at night time.
Yeah. It's such an unusual kind of space where they determine their own hours. One of them I tried to call was like, we actually don't know when that doctor will work. They tell us a couple of days before when they've got an availability, and then we just put them on for that day. So that also says a lot about continuity of care.
Zero.
Exactly. That patient is being seen by a different doctor every single time from some clinics. Obviously, this is a very vague, broad statement because there are some where you do get the proper doctor.
But how IMM can help, obviously the cannabis management program, I think, is by far the best thing that could be implemented for patients that are using cannabis and known by the insurer to be using cannabis. Unfortunately, what we're seeing a lot of is we get referred a complex patient. We're actually discovering that they're using cannabis before the NTD or the insurer.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge in itself. So a lot of insurers are unaware that their claimants are using cannabis, as well as the NTD are unaware that they're using cannabis until we get a random referral.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times it's triggered by other complex medications that sort of identify that this person's using cannabis as well.
Yeah.
But absolutely, wherever an insurer is considering funding cannabis, they've had requests from a claimant to fund cannabis, or they've just been notified by their NTD that they're requesting this person use cannabis.
Yeah.
That's where the cannabis management program needs to be implemented.
Yeah.
That's where we can make sure that there's an established treatment plan, exactly what that article is saying, which the TGA is encouraging, where there is an active management plan in place. There's an exit strategy
huge.
Created on initiation.
Yeah.
And it's being monitored throughout that 12-week treatment trial period, where we can clinically and critically assess whether the medication is effective or not.
That's right.
And not just anecdotal feedback from a patient to say, I think I'm feeling better or whatever.
Exactly.
If there's no outcomes, it's likely the medication's ineffective and it should be ceased. If it is effective, great. It means that all the other medications have most likely either reduced or ceased by that end of that 12-week period. The person's obviously feeling a lot better because they're off those medications. They're probably functioning a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's been monitored throughout that 12 weeks as well. And for the people that are getting benefit from it, great. Let's review it again in 3 months' time and see if those are continuing to improve.
Yes.
That's where we can get clinical improvements rather than just prescribed medications and somewhat drug dealing from these cannabis clinics.
Yeah. And the other thing too with the exit strategy, I know, especially for work cover patients, return to work is a goal. And if you are on THC products, you're not meant to drive. And there has been some recent changes around the legalities of that, which I don't know if insurers know much about.
Victoria specifically currently, is that right?
Yeah. So Victoria's it's like a vague sort of statement of, if a patient has got proof that they have been prescribed cannabis and that they were not under the influence whilst they were driving, they could get let off from like legal, I don't know, losing their license or fines or what. I'm not sure what.
And I think just to explain that in a little bit more detail, as opposed to things like opioids, benzos, other significant medications that are in your system, the ruling for those is that you can't drive or operate machinery whilst affected by the medication.
Exactly. So
which
if you're
means that there's like
sedated-
discretion from the police officer, for instance, to say, I think you're affected, in which case that's a problem. But cannabis is very different, where cannabis previously in South Australia, and it's still the same in all other states, but in South Australia they've changed it to be more alongside opioids and benzos. You can't drive whilst affected or intoxicated by the substance.
But it's not totally illegal there. Is that right? Because it is illegal
that's right. So
here.
it's not totally illegal to drive whilst using cannabis in Victoria. But in all other states currently, you're unable to drive whilst it's in your system.
Yeah.
So irrespective of whether you think you're affected by the medication or not, if it's in your system,
it's still a no.
It's still a no.
It's just Victoria that's changed. But it will be potentially a matter of time before the other states catch on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Everything seems to get trialled in Victoria. Even like SafeScript was trialled down there.
To see how it
rolled
goes.
out across other states.
So, but still, so outside of Victoria, the other states still state you can't have THC in your system when you're driving. And so if you do have plans to return to work, I'm assuming you're going to need to drive to work. So that's not
or drive for work.
Yeah, or potentially drive for work. Yeah. Or have to operate machinery for work. And so THC is not a long-term medication because of that as well. And that's why we're always banging on about an exit strategy. You can use the medicinal cannabis, help you get off your opioids or your benzos or whatever the high-risk drugs are, get you into a better place to engage in the allied health, which is going to help you long-term, exercise, whatever it is, and then create the exit strategy. Come off the THC-containing flowers first, get rid of that, and then reduce the THC-containing oils and try and maintain on a CBD isolate only. Because if you are on a CBD isolate product, it's not going to impact your driving capacity and your working capacity. So
in some instances, some employers still don't
want you to have it.
Only, but,
that'll be their policy. Yeah. So it's just about having a plan. And so that's a lot of the stuff that we discuss with the cannabis doctors, if they are continuing to use it and there is a plan for that person to enter the workforce again. Because, it's just going to impact them on a long-term basis. If they're continuing THC products, it's not ideal.
And again, that's one of the things that is discussed in our management program.
Yes.
Either at the initiation, which it is discussed then, but then we're starting to talk about an exit strategy at that 12-week mark.
Yes.
If it's not been effective at that stage.
Or even if it is effective and they want to continue it, that's fine, but it's not to be continued for forever.
What's the plan after that?
What's the plan? Because the impact study, which we state a lot, had all the different conditions, so all the different cannabis products, and it was a study done here in Australia, in South Australia, I think, 4,000 patients. Like, it's the longest study we've had. And you see all the benefits in the first 3 months. We've talked about this so much. If you've heard any about cannabis webinars.
That was the 12-week treatment plan. That's why specialists talk about a 12-week treatment plan.
Yeah, the first 3 months is where all the changes happen, and it's the most important part of implementing medication changes. And then after that, everything plateaus, and there's not really much benefit. And that study went for 2 years, and we generally do not support it for more than 2 years.
No.
So that's the important part of, okay, great. If this has led to some great improvements. They were able to get off their meds in the 3 months. We've deemed it, it's reasonable to continue now for a little bit longer, but not forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, whatever changes have happened after 12 weeks is what you're going to be left with for the remainder of that treatment period.
It'll plateau. You're not going to get much extra.
We would never advocate for it for 2 years in its
entirety.
But you'd be reviewing it every 3 to 6 months maximum.
To put a plan in place.
Yeah.
Because people do get withdrawal. They may get rebound. They get massive impacts on their mood and sleep if they just stop the cannabis overnight, especially if they're using a lot of it. Yeah. And that's really important. I think everyone thinks, it's just like a herbal medication. It's a natural treatment. It'll be fine. But people really suffer if they're using a lot of THC containing cannabis products and then they just stop. They're going to have major side effects to that. So the exit strategy is important to gradually get them off the products in a safe way so they're not having rebound issues. They're not getting agitated and angry. They're not just like not sleeping for weeks at a time. Like, we want to do it in a way that is better for the patient. And that's why we will try and do that with the doctors, like gradually reduce them off their products so they don't have to go through those issues.
Very good. All right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting article. I'm sure there'll be more on it. They are still investigating another 60 practitioners currently. So there'll be...
I'm so curious to know who they are.
Yeah.
There's one person on my list I hope they look at.
Same. We'd all know. They'd all know.
We're all psychically thinking that.
So that'll be a watch and act type scenario. We might even do another one of these if they
release more info.
Another article that's released on it.
Yeah.
But again, medicinal cannabis management program for all claimants that are taking medicinal cannabis that you're aware of or requesting the use of medicinal cannabis in their claims. That's a no-brainer. We also do review medicinal cannabis as part of the request to determine whether it is appropriate or not. Because in a lot of instances, it's not. Especially when these types of things are identified as part of that request, where they've either been using it for years themselves
already.
And self-funding it, or there's no treatment plan in place, there's no
It hasn't really led to
anything,
any improvements.
No improvements.
Yeah.
Those types of things, then that's not necessarily a program, that's just the review.
That's just a review.
Whether you should even fund it or not.
Yeah, we can just give a reasonably necessary opinion.
Yep.
I wanted to just read from this article, in case if you don't get a chance to read it, concerning conduct observed by the AHPRA. Multiple practitioners who issued more than 10,000 prescriptions for medicinal cannabis products in 6 months. That's a lot, by the way. Consultations lasting between a few seconds and a few minutes. So obviously they're not checking. Prescribing without a legitimate reason, including just because the patient requested it. Failing to fully assess a patient's mental health or history of substance use disorders, leading to serious adverse outcomes such as psychotic episodes. This one's a big one. Not checking patient identity, including prescribing for people under 18. Prescribing excessive quantities of medicinal cannabis in each prescription. Providing multiple prescriptions for a single patient. Not checking real-time prescription monitoring systems and therefore not being aware of their other prescribed medicines. Not coordinating care with the patient's other prescribers. Not self-prescribing or prescribing for family members. Having a conflict of interest by only prescribing the product which they supply by the company and the practitioner associated with that.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're making the money basically of what they're prescribing. All the concerns we've been raising for years.
Industry at the moment.
Yeah.
I feel like not so much in the GP space, but in the cannabis clinic space.
Yes,
It seems like there's a lot happening there where we have been aware of it since
banging
it
on
started.
about it constantly, and finally someone's listening.
Yeah, it's good.
It is good.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.
We'll talk again.
We definitely will.